Hello there, and welcome to JagaVision. We're on episode 134 of JagaVision. That's 134 weeks of drinking tea with some awesome guests. We have my youngest guest ever. I think Penelope's going to be doing most of the talk.
She probably will.
Yeah. And we're also joined by Jim Finlayson, and he's very knowledgeable about the mechanics of running, and he coaches. And it's awesome to have you on the show. Call him Coach Jim here at JagaSilk. He's gotten us on a trajectory where we don't hurt ourselves when we run, which is that's
the starting point.
He's a very fast runner. He's a career runner. He at one point had the Guinness World Record for the beer mile. He also has won the TC10K back in the day amongst many other races in his career. And he's very knowledgeable about the mechanics of running, and he coaches. And we just have a good time talking about tea as well. And there's I think about 10, if not 15 years of history with Jim buying our matcha.
Say it's about that.
Yeah,
it's been a long time.
So even before we had the tea shop, when we were just wholesaling to cafes, Jim has been, so that's pre-2009 that we've been having you drinking our tea. So really, appreciate that. It's awesome to have you on the show. And we got some pear juice for Penelope.
She would love a little bit more. She's actually pointed at the glass saying more.
Okay, all right, we can do this.
Oh,
is it good?
She loves it.
Yeah?
She loves it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good. That's pretty good.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
I was telling Jim, Penelope that I have a hard time just spilling the pear juice through I call it the hole in my chin. Amazing. Yeah, I can. It happens when I'm wearing white clothes.
Yeah.
And I'm drinking
right.
something red.
About to head out somewhere important.
Somewhere important.
Yeah.
But yeah, I figured we would make some matcha and talk about what this has been doing for your life. So maybe we begin with that. When did you start drinking matcha?
I'd say
why?
I'm not sure if I'm going to remember exactly when I started, but I think it was around 2008, I believe it was. Might have been 2004.
Okay.
One of the main reasons was I was diagnosed with MS in 2008, and so instead of taking medication, I wanted to look into all the things that I could do naturally to help mitigate and manage the disease. And matcha was one of the things that had come across my radar. I went full dive into the matcha world. And just found that it seemed to really have a positive effect on inflammation in my body, reducing inflammation and reducing any sensations of pain or discomfort,
which
as well.
Can come in waves. I understand.
Yeah.
Even exactly. When you're being careful, but this does.
It's more when if the mind's relapsing remitting, and so sometimes when it's relapsed, it's not something that I have to worry about so much. But when it remits, then you can definitely have some. Usually there's pain, and usually there's some strange sensations of temperature, some things that feel hot are actually cold, and vice versa. So so I found that the matcha really seemed to help. For me, it was a really acute difference between, say, drinking coffee versus matcha, and I love my coffee too, but if I drank coffee, I could notice more pain in the areas where there was some pain, and if I drank matcha, I would notice that it would actually seem to kind of cool off and be less uncomfortable.
It's interesting. I've been really into Chinese medicine recently and doing a lot more acupuncture. And Miu gets Tuina, which is a kind of a really intense Chinese massage. But that process, when that perspective talks about the cooling and the heating sort of roles that food plays, and green tea is supposed to play a cooling role on the system.
You definitely notice that. Yeah, I would say. Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily notice it as a cooling temperature, but it did seem to reduce any sort of sensation of hot spots.
Yeah, that's I think the because it's all philosophical, right? The medicine itself is a philosophy. It's often said. So it's that's interesting. I'm actually interested to know what coffee is from a Chinese medicine perspective.
Yeah, I'd be interested to know too. If you find out, let me know.
Yeah,
I don't know. I haven't looked into it, but
I wonder if it's warming. I know that crimson tea or black tea is. Do you find that when you have black tea, it has a different effect or no effect?
Black tea seems pretty neutral to me.
Okay.
I like it. I like the effects, I think on my mind. But I haven't noticed a physical response really.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
At least not with respect to, say, overt MS symptoms.
Because I think, and again, I think the show didn't work out in the end. Pardon me if we're dual talking something that is up online. I do need to double check that. But what I remember talking about too was how you'd found that red wine and dark chocolate also seemed to help. Does that still hold true?
The dark chocolate for sure. The red wine is questionable.
Okay.
Yeah, I
there's
think
new Canadian health guidelines saying don't drink at all, right? And even my mom's a nurse, and she was saying she's not.
I mean,
She says that study doesn't seem as
I don't know
fully rounded out as it should be.
I was gonna say, I don't think I subscribe to that. I mean, I do think that at the worst, a little bit of red wine for me is neutral.
Okay.
I don't know that it necessarily has a positive benefit, but dark chocolate, I am very I'm probably deeper into the dark chocolate world than I am the matcha world or the tea world. So,
Okay.
yeah,
That's interesting. Yeah, no, I mean, it's one of the reasons might be I get the feeling from you from our conversations over the years that you're really interested in, and also not just the healthful component, but the flavor component.
Yes.
And
big factor
and the craft component and the work that I think there's perhaps that's where we have a resonance is like we try to bring that to the matcha world. But I think that it's not very. I think that perhaps because of the chocolate project in town, maybe, I don't know, but I feel like I'm exposed to more companies that seem to take that perspective with chocolate.
Yeah.
Whereas I know they exist with tea, but, and I think they're getting a little bit easier to find, but I think still challenging to find with matcha.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
So it's, and it's just so, but there's not just like the flavor component though, then too, with matcha, what's nice too is, especially if you're using it for medicine like you are, then that, how recently it was milled is going to play a role, right?
Absolutely.
I often tell people the story of you told me that you were getting matcha from one of our supermarket clients, and it wasn't as fresh, and you noticed that what it did for your system wasn't as ideal as when it was fresh. Yeah,
made a difference for sure. Yeah. So I'm a big believer in getting closer to the source, closer to the data production or milling or picking.
It makes sense, right? Yeah. I mean, tencha is what's frozen. Hey, like when you make matcha, you're milling tencha, and tencha is the deveined, destemmed, shade-grown leaf of Camellia sinensis, the tea plant. And when you want to make a matcha, you put it through a mill, and you need it to be less than 10 microns.
Right.
And that's how you make a matcha. But what's interesting is, I think, say with roast dates for coffee, I think those are really important, but as are the dates of harvest for the green bean. Mm-hmm. But the roast date is almost that much more important. Yep. With matcha, the mill date is extremely important, but so is the harvest date, which is I think what you were talking about there. But in its tencha form, it's actually put into deep freeze. And so you can actually see the tencha taste very decent even like a year and a half or 2 years down the road.
Yeah. Okay.
But it seems to really find its maturity in about October after the spring harvest.
Yeah.
That's where it tastes really good. So around like the fall to spring, I think. Yeah. And then when you do get it freshly harvested, there doesn't seem to be as much of a concentration of umami. You get a lot more of the florality, which is interesting. Yeah. So there's a matcha for you, sir.
Thank you.
So we were talking about the scale that I'm using too, right? So Penelope is, I imagine, the one making matcha at home most of the time.
She makes it. Yeah, she makes it, and she usually eats some chocolate while she's making it.
Of course, cooks steaks.
Exactly.
Drinks whiskey.
Yeah, she's
pretty hardcore.
She's particular.
You're running the show?
She actually knows where my chocolate drawer is. Yeah, she'll go and she has her own chocolate bar. Like when we go into the chocolate project, she's like, that one. And she knows the one that she likes. And so I just give her a small little break of it very periodically. And we worked through the bar over a month or so.
Right. So I'm gonna. So you were asking me about this scale. So this is a scale that we're using for making matcha. It is from Masaya, and you were asking if I prefer it over this one, which is like the larger scale. And I would say that it's worth it to get the small one because it adjusts itself for barometric pressure.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Whereas the big one doesn't. Now, I think the nice thing about the big one is that you're looking at a more surface to work with.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that in my tea bar, I like to be able to make 2 shots at the same time.
Yeah.
That can help with my workflow. And I also like to use it for just when I'm working with larger items. But with matcha in particular, you know,
this is the one that I use, but I've definitely been
eyeing up the big one.
Yeah, I mean, I've had it on my radar. Whether or not I'm actually ever going to get it, I don't know. I really love this scale. So.
Yeah, it works. I think it's the one we recommend. And our other setup too that we were talking about was my temperature variable kettle. I think that makes a big difference.
And I have one of those as well, and I love it.
And you were actually asking me about temperature too, and I do 60 degrees when we are. I do 60 degrees for anything from Kyoto. So if you look and you have something from Fujioka-san, like the Okumidori or anything like that, or the Samidori single cultivars, then it tastes better at a lower temperature.
That's right, it's tea.
It is tea.
Yeah, she knows her tea.
Yeah, she knows her tea.
Don't you, Dino? You know what's up.
It's matcha.
Yeah.
Matcha. Yeah, and also what I like is to set this little scale so it has a count up timer, so I can see how much time I'm spending whisking, and I like to keep it to about 15 seconds.
Okay.
I find that controlled agitation makes a big difference for sure. Cheers.
Yeah, sorry, I drank mine.
No, you need to. Yeah, it's like an
really
espresso
good.
shot. You need to drink it right away. We're on a new system right now where we have a part 1 and a part 2. So you're watching part 1 right now, and make sure that at the end of this episode, you're aware that you need to click to part 2.